Chapter 1: Red Dust and Whispers. The Martian sun, a pale disk in the ochre sky, cast long shadows across the sprawling hydroponic bays of New Olympus. Dust, the fine red powder that clung to everything, coated the gleaming chrome and glass of the colony's sprawling structures, a constant reminder of their fragile existence on this alien world. Dr. Aris Thorne, a man etched with the weariness of long hours and unspoken regrets, stared out at the vista from his biolab window. At 47, his face bore the map of a life spent wrestling with the complexities of human biology, a life marked by both brilliant successes and devastating failures. The rhythmic hum of the life support systems, the gentle whir of automated harvesters, usually a comforting symphony, today felt like a mocking lullaby. A cough, sharp and insistent, ripped through the sterile air, shattering the quiet. It was Dr. Lena Reyes, her usually sharp eyes clouded with worry. "Another one, Aris," she said, her voice strained, pushing a stray strand of dark hair behind her ear. "Young Cato. Same symptoms. Fever, respiratory distress, rapid cellular degradation." Aris turned, his gaze meeting Lena's. He knew what she meant. That flu, as the colony leader, the perpetually optimistic Governor Thorne, had so blithely called it, was anything but. "Governor Thorne still insists on downplaying it," Lena continued, her frustration evident. "He's worried about panic. Says it's just a strain of terrestrial influenza, adapted to the Martian environment." Aris snorted, a dry, humorless sound. "Terrestrial influenza doesn't melt your lungs in a matter of hours." He ran a hand through his thinning hair, his movements sharp with barely contained anxiety. "The adaptive rate is unnerving. It's changing too fast." Lena nodded grimly. "We've tried every antiviral, every antibiotic. Nothing slows it down. It's like it's learning." Suddenly, a frantic call crackled over the lab's comm unit. The voice was breathless, filled with a raw terror that sent a chill down Aris's spine. "Dr. Thorne! It's Med Bay 4, we've lost another one." It was fast. The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of mortality. Aris felt a familiar knot tighten in his stomach, a knot woven from guilt and the memory of a lost patient, a patient he'd failed years ago, back on a dying Earth. This time, it felt different. This wasn't just a patient. It was a colony. A seed of humanity planted on the red soil of Mars. And it was dying. He felt the cold dread of a potential extinction event claw its way up his spine. "Lena," Aris said, his voice low and urgent, "get me the latest genetic sequencing data. This isn't just a flu. This is something else." He turned back to the window, the crimson dust swirling outside mirroring the turmoil raging within him. The red dust whispered secrets of a silent killer, a silent threat that could snuff out their fragile existence in the blink of an eye. The whispers spoke of a nemesis. Chapter 2: Nemesis Awakens. Panic, like a wildfire fueled by fear, swept through New Olympus. The initial wave of illness, dismissed as a mild flu, had exploded into a full-blown crisis. Med bays overflowed, their sterile white walls stained with the grim reality of a rapidly escalating death toll. The rhythmic hum of life support systems now competed with the frantic beeps of heart monitors and the hushed whispers of overwhelmed medical staff. Dr. Lena Reyes, her face etched with exhaustion, moved through the chaotic corridors, her eyes darting from patient to patient, her movements precise and efficient despite the overwhelming pressure. She collided with Governor Thorne, his usually jovial face grim and strained. "Lena," Thorne said, his voice tight with a forced calm that didn't quite reach his eyes, "the quarantine protocols are failing. It's spreading too fast." Lena met his gaze, her expression unyielding. "Governor, we need to admit this isn't just a flu. It's adapting. It's learning." "Learning?" Thorne scoffed, a nervous tick playing at the corner of his mouth. "Don't be dramatic, Lena. We need to maintain order. Panic will only make things worse." "Order won't save us, Governor," Lena retorted, her voice sharper now. "We need to face reality. We're dealing with something unprecedented. Meanwhile, Aris Thorne, his lab a whirlwind of activity, stared at the latest genetic sequencing data. The pathogen, which he had begun to refer to as Nemesis, showed an unnerving rate of mutation. It was evolving at a speed that defied scientific understanding. His team, a collection of brilliant but weary scientists, worked with feverish intensity, their faces illuminated by the cold glow of computer screens. "It's changing our countermeasures as fast as we deploy them," Dr. Jian Li, a young virologist, reported, his voice tight with frustration. "It's like playing a game of cat and mouse where the mouse keeps inventing new ways to win." Outside the colony, the Martian landscape stretched, a vast and unforgiving expanse of red dust and ancient canyons. The wind, a mournful whisper across the desolate plains, seemed to carry an ominous foreboding. Aris felt a primal fear, a sense that Nemesis wasn't just a disease, it was something older, something tied to this planet's hidden history. The sight of the untamed Martian wilderness, previously a source of wonder and opportunity, now felt like a menacing presence, a reminder of the raw power of nature, a power that humanity had so far underestimated. A sudden jolt ran through the lab as the power flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. Chaos erupted. The backup generators kicked in with a jarring roar, restoring the lights, but the brief blackout had served as a stark reminder of their vulnerability, a vulnerability amplified by the invisible enemy that was already inside their walls. Nemesis had awakened, and it was hungry. Chapter 3: The Ghost in the Machine. The flickering lights of the lab, a testament to the colony's dwindling resources, cast long, dancing shadows on the faces of the exhausted scientists. Aris Thorne, fueled by adrenaline and despair, stared at the holographic projection of Nemesis's genome. It was a shifting, chaotic landscape of genetic code, a constantly evolving monster. "It's not just adapting, it's learning," Aris muttered, tracing the intricate patterns with a trembling finger. "It's anticipating our countermeasures." Dr. Jian Li, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep, nodded grimly. "We've tried every antiviral cocktail imaginable. Every antibiotic. It's like throwing pebbles at a mountain. It just absorbs them." Lena Reyes, her usually sharp gaze clouded with worry, approached Aris. "I found something unusual. A biosignature within Nemesis's genetic code. It doesn't match anything in our database. It's alien." Aris felt a jolt of cold dread. "Alien? You mean it's not terrestrial?" Lena nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "It appears to be a fusion, a hybrid. Part terrestrial, part something else. Something Martian." The implications were terrifying. Nemesis wasn't just a random mutation. It was something ancient, something indigenous to Mars, something that had been lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to unleash its deadly potential. The tension in the room was palpable, broken only by the rhythmic tapping of keyboards and the occasional frustrated sigh. Aris knew what had to be done, though the idea felt like a leap of faith into the abyss. It was a desperate gamble, a last roll of the dice. "I have an idea," Aris said, his voice barely above a whisper, yet carrying an unexpected authority. "It's radical. It's ethically questionable. But it might be our only chance." He turned to the assembled scientists, his eyes meeting theirs one by one. The weight of their collective hope, and the very real possibility of utter failure, hung heavily in the air. "We need to genetically modify the human immune system. We need to use CRISPR's technology to create a targeted response. A response tailored to Nemesis's ever-changing genome." The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated only by the hum of the cooling systems and the rhythmic pulse of the life support machinery. The proposal was audacious, bordering on reckless. The ethical implications alone could shatter the already strained unity of the colony. But fear, cold and brutal, gnawed at the edges of their collective consciousness. The alternative was far worse. It was death. Slowly, almost reluctantly, the scientists began to nod, acknowledging the terrifying gamble before them. This wasn't about science, it was about survival. And survival demanded a leap of faith, a desperate gamble in the face of the unknown. The race against Nemesis had begun, a race where the only finish line was hope, a fragile hope built on the audacity of human ingenuity. A ghost in the machine of life itself had been unleashed, and humanity would fight back with the very fabric of its existence. Chapter 4: The Fractured Faith. The announcement of the Lazarus Protocol, Aris Thorne's audacious plan to genetically modify the human immune system using CRISPR's technology, sent shockwaves through New Olympus. The colony, already reeling from the relentless onslaught of Nemesis, was now fractured by a new conflict, a fierce ethical debate. The colony's central plaza, usually bustling with activity, was transformed into a tense arena. Holographic projections of the Lazarus Protocol's details flickered, casting an eerie glow on the faces of the assembled colonists. Governor Thorne, his face pale and drawn, addressed the crowd, his words carefully chosen, yet failing to mask his deep unease. "This is unprecedented," he said, his voice strained. "Dr. Thorne's proposal involves altering our very genetic code. The long-term consequences are unknown. We must proceed with caution." A wave of murmurs swept through the crowd. Fear mingled with anger, hope with skepticism. Some colonists saw the Lazarus Protocol as a desperate, necessary gamble, others viewed it as a reckless act of scientific hubris, a Pandora's box best left unopened. Lena Reyes, a staunch supporter of Ares, stepped forward, her voice ringing with conviction. "Governor, we're running out of time. Nemesis is adapting faster than we can develop conventional treatments. The Lazarus Protocol is our only hope. It's a risk, yes, but it's a calculated risk. A risk we must take if we want to survive." Her words sparked a heated debate. Religious leaders denounced the plan as an affront to nature, while pragmatists argued that survival trumped all other considerations. Scientists argued over the potential side effects, the risks of unforeseen mutations. The plaza became a cacophony of voices, a battlefield of conflicting opinions and desperate hopes. Ares, watching from the sidelines, felt a familiar weight of responsibility crush his shoulders. The weight of the colony's fate rested on his shoulders. He had always pushed the boundaries of science, but never had the stakes been this high. His past failure, a failed attempt to develop a cure for a devastating illness on Earth, haunted him, a constant reminder of the devastating consequences of scientific mistakes. Suddenly, a commotion erupted near the edge of the plaza. A small group of protesters, their faces masked and their voices filled with hatred, began shouting accusations, targeting Ares and his team. The saboteur, whose actions had already hampered the initial research, had launched their latest attack. The protest, carefully orchestrated, turned violent, highlighting the colony's growing divisions. The hope of unity, vital in such a crisis, was fracturing, mirroring the growing cracks in the very foundation of their survival. The race against Nemesis was now a race against time, and against the growing internal strife that threatened to tear the colony apart. Chapter 5: Seeds of Hope, Seeds of Doubt. The ethical debate, though fierce, ultimately couldn't halt the relentless advance of Nemesis. The Lazarus Protocol, despite its inherent risks, was approved, albeit with stringent conditions and significant oversight. A small, carefully selected group of volunteers, including Lena Reyes, were chosen for the initial trial. The atmosphere in the specially designated ward was a tense blend of hope and fear. Aris Thorne, his face etched with worry and determination, oversaw the preparations. He moved with a quiet intensity, his movements precise and economical, each action reflecting the immense weight of responsibility he carried. Lena, her eyes reflecting a mixture of bravery and apprehension, offered a small, reassuring smile. "Ready?" Ares asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lena nodded, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "Ready." The administration of the genetically modified immune response was a delicate procedure, a dance between cutting-edge technology and the fragile human body. The CRISPR system, deployed with precision, began its work, rewriting the volunteers' genetic code, arming their immune systems against the ever-evolving threat of Nemesis. The initial days were filled with cautious optimism. The volunteers showed no immediate adverse reactions. Their immune systems responded positively to the modified genetic sequence, demonstrating a heightened capacity to combat the pathogen. Aris and his team breathed a collective sigh of relief, a fleeting moment of hope in the midst of the overwhelming crisis. However, this fragile hope was soon shattered. Governor Thorne, under increasing pressure to show tangible results, made a controversial decision. He prioritized the Lazarus Protocol's administration for a select group of influential colonists, essentially creating a two-tiered system of survival. This decision, born from a mixture of desperation and elitism, ignited a new wave of unrest and deepened the existing divisions within the colony. Meanwhile, unexpected complications emerged. One of the volunteers, a young technician named Kai, experienced a severe allergic reaction. His body rejected the modified genetic sequence, triggering a cascade of potentially fatal complications. The initial euphoria gave way to a chilling realization: the Lazarus Protocol, despite its potential, was far from perfect. The seeds of hope were intertwined with seeds of doubt, the future of New Olympus hanging precariously in the balance. Aris faced a stark choice: press forward despite the risks, or abandon the project and accept the inevitable. The choice felt less like a decision and more like a sentence. The relentless ticking of the clock amplified the already deafening silence. The fight for survival had taken a brutal turn, the lines between hope and despair blurring into a terrifying uncertainty. Chapter 6: The Crucible. Nemesis, relentless and unforgiving, continued its relentless advance. The colony's defenses, already strained, were crumbling. The initial optimism surrounding the Lazarus Protocol had given way to a desperate race against time, a fight for survival waged on the razor's edge of hope and despair. Aris Thorne, his face gaunt and etched with exhaustion, worked tirelessly, fueled by a potent cocktail of caffeine and adrenaline. The allergic reaction experienced by Kai had exposed a critical flaw in the original protocol. The modified genetic sequence, while effective against Nemesis, triggered an unforeseen immune response in some individuals. Aris had to refine the protocol, to find a way to neutralize the allergic reaction without compromising its efficacy against the pathogen. Lena Reyes, her own body still recovering from the initial treatment, worked alongside him, her sharp intellect and unwavering determination proving invaluable. Jen Lee, his eyes perpetually bloodshot, pored over the genetic data, his fingers flying across the keyboard, attempting to decipher the complexities of Nemesis's constantly evolving genome. "The mutation rate is increasing," Jen announced, his voice strained. "It's adapting to the modified immune response. We have to act fast." The pressure was immense. The colony was on the brink of collapse. The political tensions, exacerbated by Governor Thorne's controversial decisions, threatened to tear the community apart. Aris, burdened by the weight of the colony's fate, felt a crushing sense of responsibility, a feeling magnified by the haunting memory of his past failures. In a desperate gamble, Aris and his team decided to conduct a large-scale trial of the refined Lazarus Protocol. The decision was fraught with risk. Failure could condemn the entire colony to extinction. Success was far from guaranteed. The atmosphere in the designated ward was charged with tension. The volunteers, a diverse group representing a cross-section of New Olympus society, were a microcosm of the colony itself, fear, hope, and resignation intermingled in their anxious eyes. Among them was Lena, her resolve firm, her eyes mirroring the determination of a warrior facing an insurmountable enemy. As the modified genetic sequence was administered, the atmosphere held its breath. The next few hours would determine the fate of New Olympus, a tiny beacon of humanity clinging to the edge of a vast, unforgiving Martian wilderness. The crucible had been forged, and the colonists, scientists, and leaders of New Olympus were now being tested in the fires of survival, their destiny hanging in the balance. The weight of the decision, the fear of failure, the weight of hope, these emotions hung heavy in the air, a tangible presence in the ward as Aris and his team watched, their hearts pounding in unison with the rhythmic beeps of the life support monitors. This was not just a test of a new treatment, this was a test of humanity's will to survive. Chapter 7: Lazarus Rising. The large-scale trial of the refined Lazarus Protocol unfolded in a tense, almost suffocating atmosphere. Aris Thorne, his face a mask of grim determination, watched from the monitoring room, his eyes glued to the vital signs displayed on a multitude of screens. Lena Reyes, her pale face reflecting the strain of the past weeks, stood beside him, her hand resting reassuringly on his arm. The initial hours were agonizing. The volunteers showed a variety of responses to the modified genetic sequence. Some experienced mild side effects, while others showed no reaction at all. Kai, who had suffered the severe allergic reaction during the initial trial, exhibited a surprisingly positive response, his immune system aggressively combating Nemesis. Then, a chilling development. A cluster of volunteers experienced a sudden, drastic drop in blood pressure. Panic threatened to overwhelm the monitoring team. Aris, his mind racing, immediately ordered a halt to the administration of the modified sequence. The situation was critical. Failure loomed large, casting a long shadow of despair over the tense monitoring room. Lena, her eyes blazing with a fierce determination, stepped forward. "Aris," she said, her voice clear and sharp, cutting through the growing panic. "Remember the biosignature? The Martian element in Nemesis? It's reacting to the modified sequence. It's not an allergic reaction, it's a counter-response. We need to adjust the sequence to counter the Martian element." Aris, his mind now racing with a new line of thought, nodded. Lena's insight provided a crucial turning point. He swiftly directed his team to make the necessary adjustments to the genetic sequence. Time was of the essence. The fate of New Olympus hung precariously in the balance. The revised Lazarus Protocol was administered to the affected volunteers. The results were immediate and dramatic. The blood pressure stabilized, the immune response strengthened. Nemesis, facing this new, refined countermeasure, began to falter. The tide was turning. A wave of relief washed over the monitoring team. The tension in the room eased, replaced by a cautious optimism. The Lazarus Protocol, honed in the crucible of crisis, was working. Nemesis, the relentless enemy, was finally being pushed back. However, a new, unsettling side effect emerged. The volunteers who had received the modified sequence exhibited heightened sensory perception, a heightened awareness of their surroundings. The victory was bittersweet, accompanied by the unsettling knowledge that the modified immune response had altered their very consciousness, raising profound questions about the long-term consequences of their success. The lines between victory and a new, unforeseen challenge were blurred. The Lazarus Protocol had risen, but at what cost? Chapter 8, Echoes of Mars. The dust settled, both literally and metaphorically, on New Olympus. Nemesis was contained. The Lazarus Protocol, though imperfect, had succeeded in turning the tide, buying humanity precious time. But the victory was bittersweet, tinged with a profound sense of unease. Aris Thorne, standing on the observation deck overlooking the sprawling colony, felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. The ordeal had aged him, etched lines of worry and strain onto his already weary face. He looked out at the Martian landscape, the crimson dust swirling in the distance, a constant reminder of the fragility of their existence. Lena Reyes joined him, her gaze mirroring his weariness, but also reflecting a flicker of quiet pride. "We did it, Aris," she said, her voice soft, yet filled with a quiet strength. Aris nodded, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. "We did," he replied, his voice husky. "But at a cost." The cost was more than just the physical toll. The modified immune response, while effective against Nemesis, had altered the volunteers' perception. They experienced the world with heightened senses, an overwhelming influx of sensory information. Some found it exhilarating, others terrifying. The long-term effects remained unknown, a looming uncertainty casting a shadow over their hard-won victory. Governor Theron, his initial skepticism replaced by grudging admiration, approached them. His face was a mixture of relief and apprehension. "The colony is safe, for now," he said, his voice still carrying a trace of the strain of the past weeks. "But the Lazarus Protocol, it raises questions. Questions we need to answer." The questions were numerous and profound. The ethical implications of genetic manipulation were far-reaching, far beyond the immediate crisis. The alteration of human consciousness opened a Pandora's box of unforeseen consequences. The future of humanity, even in the face of this hard-won victory, remained uncertain. Ares, looking out at the vast Martian landscape, knew that their struggle was far from over. They had won a battle, but but a war against the unknown, against the ethical dilemmas posed by scientific advancement, and against the inherent uncertainties of human existence, was far from won. The echoes of Mars, both ancient and newly forged, whispered of the ongoing struggle for survival, a struggle that would define humanity's future. The silence of the Martian plains held the weight of their victory, but also the ominous quiet before the next challenge, a testament to the boundless ingenuity and resilience of the human spirit, a spirit forged in the crucible of survival itself. The victory was real, but its long-term consequences remained shrouded in the rust-colored dust of a planet that had tested them to their limits, a testament to their resilience, but also a warning of the unpredictable nature of scientific advancement. The quiet on Mars was a reminder of the fight ahead, the echoes of the struggle resonating in the stillness, awaiting the next challenge to test humanity's spirit once more.